Shana Tova. Each year, the weeks leading up to high holidays are heavy for me. As I sit in my study, striving to share with you messages of comfort and inspiration, a prayer echoes back and forth between my heart and the blank page before me. My prayer repeats, be open, be aware, be honest with yourself. To my left are pictures of my family, my wife, my children, my everything. To my right are shelves of books from our tradition, full of wisdom and history, law and lesson. Behind me, always there but out of view, rests my ordination degree, which bears the signatures of my teachers who've come before me. Above their names sits a simple clock, which softly ticks each passing second. The sound beckons me with potential. In the space between the seconds, and reflected back from the glaring white page, is the metaphor I've been looking for. It seems to wink at us and whisper, yes, it's right here. Open your eyes and be awake. Time waits for no one, and the blank page before you begs to be filled. But with this Sefer Chaim, it's you who holds the pen. And your book of life, the words are yours to write, as are the stories, the deeds, and the choices. Inscribe us, we pray to God, not just to live length of days, but to be full of days where we truly live. And God responds by placing the pen in your hand, as if to say, it's up to you. Inscribe yourself. The room now fills with a sense of spiritual urgency. It seems to shout to us the question, how will you live your life to the fullest, so that you can live the most meaningful, most beautiful, most connected life that you can? Its voice seems to linger, to whisper, what will you do with your time that you have left to make the very most of your days? These existential questions are far from hypothetical, but rather are intensely personal. Don't bother looking around the room. They're addressed to you, and they're addressed to me. For this reason, the high holidays are often referred to as the Yamim Noraim, the days of awe. For it's with awe that we approach an honest assessment of our lives. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel helps us understand the concept of awe with the image of how we might approach the Grand Canyon. Perhaps you've been there. Picture yourself standing right on the edge and then looking down. It's vast. It's incredible. With our toes on the edge of the precipice, we gaze into the abyss, all the while rejoicing in the knowledge that our feet are firmly joined to unshakable ground. That is awe. A mixture of elated connection and fear. There was a special Rosh Hashana about 25 centuries ago when our ancestors described feeling this awe. They had finally returned from our Babylonian exile. Ezra the scribe called our ancestors together at the gate to read from the Torah for the first time in half a century. Some of our people raised their voices in shouting and joy because they recognized this simple act as a miracle. For once again, the Jewish people felt chosen by God, while others burst out weeping, for their lives were full of heartache, illness, injustice, and despair. Their world was like ours, rent with war and hatred, waste and betrayal. For them, it felt too much to bear. But when their leader, Nehemiah, stood to soothe them, before he spoke, he was silent. And the people were silent with him. Sometimes it's only the silence between the words which is able to convey the profound message of being chosen for a purpose. Now, raise your hand if you've ever heard of us, the Jews, referred to as the chosen people. Good. Hands down. Now, raise a finger if when you hear Jews referred to as chosen, it makes you uncomfortable. Now, I'd ask you to nod your head if at least sometimes when you hear Jews referred to as chosen, it speaks to you in a positive way, that you have positive feelings towards the term chosen people. Chosenness is worth pausing to talk about. According to our sacred stories, our patriarchs and matriarchs were promised by God that we Jews are Am Segula, that we have a special relationship with God, a unique partnership to last forever. We're dubbed Am Levavad Yishkan, a people who dwell apart, not reckoned amongst the nations, meaning somehow that we're different, for better or for worse. And our modern reaction to the idea of being chosen is complex. In the times when we were persecuted, chosenness became a cherished cultural defense mechanism. They might abuse their power over us, but we know that we're chosen. It inserted a divine order to chaos and pain. When we had nothing, were running or being hurt, perhaps the only thing that we did have was that we were chosen. Which leads to folks like Tevye, who says while fiddling on the roof, God, I know that we're your chosen people, but once in a while, can't you choose someone else? We American Jews have worked very hard over generations to fit in to mainstream society, to be accepted into law firms, universities, and country clubs, to have the Gentiles view our religious differences as just another aspect in a broad Protestant landscape. The last thing that we want to do is call attention to ourselves. Modern Jewish theologians have reconciled our discomfort with the idea of being chosen through the parable of a mother's loving relationship to her many children. She has a special relationship with each of her kids, not just one. Now, the Jewish tradition is very clear that chosen does not mean superior. Starting with Torah itself, here is what being chosen is not. We're not considered chosen because we alone have the ability to know God. Nor does God appear only to Jews or answer only Jewish prayers. Example after example, ranging from Hagar to Avimelech, Bilam to Yitro, were non-Jews who knew God at the highest level, on par with Sarah, Abraham, and Moses. Our Torah is clear that knowing God is something that all people can share in, Jews and non-Jews alike. Judaism believes that deed, not creed, is what the divine recognizes in all of its wondrous flavors. And being chosen does not imply that we Jews are more righteous than others, as our prophets and the evening news are quick to point out. In the words of Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, never did any of the major strands of Jewish thought see Jewish chosenness as a privilege. It was and is a responsibility. Throughout the centuries, we believe that we were chosen by God to be L'or Goyim, a light unto the nations, to bring knowledge and justice and civilization into the world. This was the engine that drove us to high rates of literacy, which introduced to the world life-saving medicines, concepts of human dignity, and democratic constitutions. We Jews have been taught since the womb that we hold ourselves to a higher ethical standard of how we should conduct ourselves in the world. And in turn, we hold the world to a higher standard of how it should be. Rosh Hashana is a time that we remind ourselves of this. Make no mistake, we might fall far short of that standard, but the standard is there. Whether it chose us or we chose it, the standard is here. Ultimately, we each choose what we want to believe. And who in their heart of hearts does not want to feel like they're God's partner here on earth? The wisdom of our tradition states it clearly that sometimes only through silence can the profound questions about being chosen be conveyed and received. Seeking this for myself, I took refuge in the quiet of a local monastery. Silence and isolation can be jarring, but with each breath, with each sunrise and sunset, the edges began to soften. What I'll share with you is a midrash that I wrote, sparked by the questions that we Jews have been asking on Rosh Hashana since the beginning of time. Were we chosen by God? And if so, what were we chosen for? What's the purpose of Judaism? And as Jews, what is our purpose in life? This midrash is titled, "Those Who Climb the Mountain Get to Experience the Vistas." "You see," he said to me, "I was at Sinai, and you were with me." "We were," says I, my voice inflection leaving open every doubt and certainty. I was there, he continued, when we saw the thunder and heard the lightning, and God's voice boomed out irrevocable promises, all in the silence of the unaccented Aleph, that profound pause in time when the earth stood still. I was there, and you were with me. We were, thought I. We were. That miracle which split the sea, bringing us from slavery to here, the boundary between the desert and the promised land, that miracle happened. So much so that its impact burned into our collective spiritual DNA, and echoes of it continue to ripple out with each successive Jewish generation. I had to document it, he said, for this was the fulcrum of our story and that of human history. So I did what anyone would do, he said with a knowing smile. I reached for my iPhone to record it all. The rumblings from Mount Sinai, the silence, the 10 Commandments, the entire Torah. This must be filmed, recorded, proven beyond any doubt. But then I realized that there are no iPhones in this place. No machines, no electricity. This miracle walk through the sea and then desert sands all happened before. So I reached for my paper, my pencils, my paints, my easel. I would capture every exchange, each sacred image through illustration and color. But I knew too, in that instant, that pivotal place in time, that I had no paper nor pencil, no paints nor easel. What happened to us at Sinai, it was before all that. And even if these things existed somewhere, I found myself all the same, lacking. And so I swore to myself in that moment that I would remember. I would act as a witness, an aid. For even in the beginning, I knew that in those miracles, exchanges in lifetimes, lay the secret to wisdom and communion and living life to its spiritual fullest. Afterwards, even though I had the experience, I could not convey these to my future daughters and sons without trying to describe them using words. These words were my best and my only tool to convey not just what happened, but with such precision that circles of meaning could be extracted from their every detail. I told my children, and they told theirs. Some of what they conveyed was best relayed through stories that eventually were written down over centuries, with dozens of edits and editors. This narrative as a way to access truth was codified, ascended when transcribed, and awarded a throne. Soon, men and women of conviction used sacred script, black fire on white, with letters crowned, to further convey our quest to know God, to be part of God's work, and to live a worthy life. What we experienced at Sinai, you and I, is captured in the script and parchment of the Torah scroll. Knowledge, cleared to be learned, in the white space between each letter, in every bound word. What happened at Sinai, when the key to the existential was delivered, is that we walked away with the command that we were chosen to try. Chosen to try again and again, despite setbacks and success, to bring the world from where it is to where it could be. To try is more than something noble. It is to be holy. To try to live up to our proclaimed ideals, and in doing so, to bring justice and awareness into the world. This is the essence of Torah. This is the essence of the Jew, actively trying to do good, to heal a broken world, tikkun olam v'malchut shaddai, with God as our partner. Not that this was easy to do. Around these stories and their symbols as metaphor towards the divine, we created an entire religion, multiple religions, if we're to be honest about it. For us, the Jews, we'll talk about it mostly with joy, often with a tone of cynicism rather than reverence. We'll have a major holiday to commemorate it. We'll tell the story in the right order, and we'll recall the heart of the matter through our five senses. The table will be heavy with symbolic delectables, just the way your mother's family always did it. We'll sing songs and mark how yet another year has gone by, the ones asking, Ma nishtana, a year older. I'm not saying that Mount Sinai happened the way that you think it happened, nor I'm saying that it absolutely did not. All that I'm saying is that I was at Sinai, and you were there with me. And starting at that very moment, the moment that started forever, we chose to try. Baruch atah Adonai, Shemea kol trua amo Yisrael barachamim. Blessed are you in our lives, Adonai. You hear with love the shofar, true voice of your people Israel. Please rise.